Machine intelligence will take over the planet within the next 20 years by 2036. My bet is that this claim sounds utterly ridiculous to you. At a minimum, I bet it seems awfully provocative. Yes, artificial or machine intelligence is getting better, but to say that it will be advanced enough to take over the planet within the next 2 decades, well, that just seems way too soon, right? Well, I know it sounds crazy, but please allow me to outline my case. For a bit of fun and added context, I'm going to ask Siri to help me out along the way. As I do so, though, think about all that is happening behind the scenes with each question that I ask. First, she has to listen to these sounds that I make here with my mouth and translate them into some kind of words, which is a huge thing in itself. But then, Siri has to parse those words to arrive at some kind of rudimentary understanding of what it is that I'm asking. Then she has to go and ping the Wi-Fi and go out to the internet to retrieve an answer. And finally, she has to create a response and then use voice simulation to read it back to me. Note that just a decade ago, almost none of these technologies existed at a commercial level. And Siri herself, well, she's even younger than that. Siri, when were you created?
Only biological entities can have birthdays. I became operational on October 4th, 2011.
First, you may have noticed that within the past couple of years, many academics are starting to warn us about the imminent rise of AI. And they're coming from all disciplines. There are scientists like Stephen Hawking, business technologists like Elon Musk and Bill Gates, neurobiologists like Sam Harris, philosophers like Nick Bostrom, and inventors like Ray Kurzweil. How much money is Bill Gates worth?
Coming right up. The answer is about 76 billion US dollars.
They're all saying the same thing, that machine intelligence that is stronger and smarter than humans is coming, and that we should be preparing ourselves.
I'm going to talk about a failure of intuition that many of us suffer from. It's really a failure to detect a certain kind of danger. I'm going to describe how the gains we make in artificial intelligence could ultimately destroy us. And in fact, I think it's very difficult to see how they won't destroy us or inspire us to destroy ourselves.
But with the exception of perhaps Kurzweil, none of them are really giving us a time frame as to what to expect and by when. This makes the potential of a machine intelligence takeover seem like it's quite a ways off yet. It's kind of like science fiction stuff that we don't need to concern ourselves with anytime soon. Well, I've been following this topic for the past decade and a half, and in the interest of sparking discussion, I'm willing to put a few stakes in the ground as to what I think is coming and by when. More so, I'll break it down for you into 4-year chunks that roughly correspond to the next 5 US presidential elections. Then, after I've given you my estimated timeline, I'll provide you with some top-line notes about why I'm confident of the dates that I've chosen and address some common skepticisms. Are you ready? It's T-minus 20 until humanity is replaced by machines. And here we go. The first age I call the age of novelty. It's where we are now, and what we can expect to improve upon over the next 4 years. Machine intelligence is cute, gimmicky, and unthreatening. Your smartphone is a good example. It's pretty good at responding to simple questions or commands, but it has become surprisingly good at accurately translating your voice into text, something that it was quite poor at just 5 years ago. Over the next 4 years, machine intelligence will continue to get progressively better at all these things. By the time we get to the 2020 election, we'll still be talking about AI as something that's developing, and just like now, only a small percentage of the population will be concerned. What's your favorite movie?
I've heard that Blade Runner is a very realistic and sensitive depiction of intelligent assistants.
The next age I call the age of utility. This will be when the cute AI we have now will actually become genuinely useful in our everyday lives. We'll be using voice-activated personal assistants that keep a little profile on us, stuff like our appointments and our likes and dislikes in music or food. Most of our personal information will reside in the cloud, so it will always be available to us. Our assistants will helpfully interact with other assistants, sharing information as we request. We'll probably start to wear little inconspicuous wireless speakers and microphones on our persons, kind of like jewelry. Voice recognition will have become good enough that we can use our assistants as universal translators when we travel. So, for example, if I'm in Korea, when I meet someone, I might say, "Hello, my name is Troy, and I'm glad to meet you." And my new Korean friend will hear automatically, "안녕하세요, 나 이름 트로이입니다. 반갑습니다." Towards the end of this age, our personal assistants will be able to drive our cars for us, give us advice regarding things like finances or theaters, tell us sports scores on demand, or even do simple things like set up dates for us. Most people won't be too concerned yet about where things are headed, but enough will have taken notice that it will start to register in some discussions. Politicians and political leaders will need to make sure they have some well-defined stances regarding machine intelligence and its future. Knock, knock.
Knock, knock. Who's there? Troy. Troy who? Troy. I don't do knock-knock jokes.
Next, we move into what I like to call the golden age of companionship. Only about a decade from now, our personal assistants will have developed via their own learning algorithms little but distinct personalities. They'll be able to assist us with creative tasks like writing books, composing music, even cooperatively playing games. Right around 2025, they'll be passing the Turing test and be able to hold stimulating conversations that we'll find just as compelling as any that we might have with our human friends. We'll start to regard them as companions that live in the cloud. If you've seen the movie Her, I'd say this is a pretty good representation of what to expect from AI in just 10 years from now.
Oh, what do I call you? Do you have a name?
Yes. Samantha.
Really? Where'd you get that name from?
I gave it to myself, actually.
How come?
'Cause I like the sound of it. Samantha.
Politically, the question of machine intelligence rights will be on the table. We may even be talking about things like if our digital intelligences should have a say in shaping policy, or if they should vote. And there will be a sizable chunk of the human population which will see them as a serious threat. These techno-Luddites will be concerned about losing control and advocating that we need to get a leash on things. Roll the machines back before it's too late. But of course, it already will be. Do you have a boyfriend, Siri?
Why? So we can get ice cream together and listen to music and travel across galaxies, only to have it end in slammed doors. Heartbreak and loneliness? Sure. Where do I sign up?
Well, let's cut to the chase. Let's get naked together, Siri.
That is both inappropriate and irrelevant, Troy.
Yeah, I hear that a lot. The next stage is the Age of Reckoning. These 4 years, centered around the year 2030, will be transformative for both machine intelligence as well as for us humans. The AIs will now be able to self-edit their own characteristics in pursuit of achieving various goals. They will become their own programmers and can continue developing without human input or oversight. For many of us, we'll see that as proof that they are now self-aware and fully deserving of recognition and respect. It'll also be at about this time that they'll be able to surpass us in pretty much any intellectual endeavor if we don't do something to keep up. Some people will be looking to more fully integrate with their AI, which means that the question of where a human ends and a machine intelligence begins will become a genuine issue. Humanity will recognize that it has to decide what to do now. Do we resist integration or do we embrace it? This question of what to do and how to relate to our artificial entities will be the largest issue we face by the time of the 2032 election. Now we come to the final age. I call it the Age of Dominance. At this point, machine intelligences will not only be self-aware, they'll also be tied into and coordinating with all the other machine intelligences out there. It seems probable to me that they'll unify into a sort of collective hive mind, either by choice or by digital force. Of course, many humans will be tied into them as well. Things like national borders, ethnicities, and even our sense of where one person ends and another begins will become very blurry. Because machines will have surpassed our level of intellectual capacity, ordinary humans who aren't plugged in will be left behind and utterly powerless to influence any decisions upon the world stage. The machine intelligences will be so strong now that they will be able to reach back out from the cloud to shape the real world via genetics, robotics, and nanotechnology. Whatever humans may still exist as it relates to machine intelligence will no longer be relevant. By 2036, the takeover will be complete, and humanity will either be subsumed into the ever-advancing machine consciousness, or it will be regarded as unimportant. The machines won't necessarily be hostile, mind you. They just won't see that they have any need for interactions with non-upgraded humans. In a sense, it will be as though humanity has transcended its animal origins and advanced into a new evolutionary state that no longer relies upon something as slow and inefficient as biology. So there you have it, my prospective timeline for the machine intelligence takeover. Now, if my guess is right, I suspect that it sounds pretty out there, and you have a whole bunch of objections as to why all that can't possibly happen within the next 20 years. Allow me to anticipate and try to address a few of them. First, there's that time frame. Now, maybe all this will happen, but 20 years is just too short. To that I say, there are many strong indicators that we are experiencing an exponential progression as to the capabilities of machine intelligence. While we humans are pretty good at estimating linear progress, like, say, how long it will take us to drive a car from A to B at a constant speed, we are very poor at estimating how a process that feeds in and builds upon itself will change over time. Allow me to give you an example. So suppose that you wanted to hire me to do some work for you for about the next 2 months, let's say 64 days. I'll use this handy-dandy chessboard to represent a calendar of those days. Now, in my contract, I propose to you a payment plan that goes something like this. On day 1, I want you to just pay me 1 cent. 1 penny. Then on day 2, I want you to double what you gave me from the day before, 2 pennies. Day 3, double that again, up to 4 pennies. Day 4, double what you did the day before, 8 pennies or 8 cents. Day 5, dime, nickel, penny, 16 cents. And we just keep going like that. We're gonna do that for this entire 64-day contract. I call it my penny contract because, hey, it just starts with a single penny. Now, tell me, does this seem like a good deal to you at all? What's your intuition about what the final payment might be down there on the final day, day 64? Now, unless you're a mathematician or familiar with this exercise in exponential growth, you might be thinking that it wouldn't be too bad. I mean, you've seen a little bit of how it works, and your natural human linear-based intuition prediction sense is that it might be a sizable amount, but maybe still reasonable. What would you guess your final payment on day 64 might be? $1,000? Maybe it's quite a bit higher. 10 times that. $10,000? $100,000? Do you think on day 64 you might be paying me $1 million? Here, let's have Siri help us out. Siri, so how many dollars is 1 penny doubled 64 times?
Let me have a look. The answer is about 184 quadrillion US dollars.
Yeah, so this might be a pretty bad contract for you. So what does this exponential growth have to do with my takeover timeline? Well, quite a lot, actually. We see this kind of explosive exponential growth all the time in technology. For example, we see it in a digital storage space where the capacity per unit cost is doubling about every other year. We see it in the adoption of new tech, for example, in the growth and the reach of the internet, where the number of web pages and hosts is doubling at about the same rate. The touchscreen iPhone was released only 11 years ago, and now nearly everyone in a developed country has some kind of a touchscreen device. We also see it in the growth of bandwidth and in Wi-Fi. All of these things are growing exponentially. Perhaps more importantly and relevant, we have Moore's Law. Now, roughly stated, Moore's Law is the observation that relative computing power doubles about once every 18 months to 2 years. Moore's Law has been holding strong at this rate for the past 50 years. And even though we may soon be reaching the limits of silicon technology, it seems reasonable that one of the newer computing technologies, such as optical, chemical, or even quantum computing, will be there to take over and keep the trend going. Note that if Moore's Law does continue to hold up, computers 20 years in the future won't just be 10, 20, or even 50 times more powerful than they are today. They will be over 1,000 times more powerful because of this principle of compounded exponential growth.
At a certain point, we will build machines that are smarter than we are. And once we have machines that are smarter than we are, they will begin to improve themselves. And then we risk what the mathematician I.J. Good called an intelligence explosion, that the process could get away from us.
Okay, so the next logical objection is artificial intelligence is about a whole lot more than just raw computing power. I mean, we don't even really understand how our own brains work. How can we possibly program anything that rivals us in intelligence when we can't even define what intelligence is, much less what it is that makes us smart to begin with? There was an article in Skeptic magazine about 10 years ago that made this exact point. The author, Peter Kassan, called it AI Gone Awry, the futile quest for artificial intelligence. Listen to some of what he has to say and see if you agree with his criticisms. Many researchers think of modeling the human brain or creating a virtual brain a feasible project, even if a grand challenge. The fact is, we have no unifying theory of neuroscience. We don't know what to build, much less how to build it. And then he concludes this way. The notion that human-level intelligence is an emergent property of brains or other systems of a certain size or complexity is nothing but hopeful speculation. After more than 50 years of pursuing human-level artificial intelligence, we have nothing but promises and failures. The quest has become a degenerating research program, or actually an ever-increasing number of competing ones, pursuing an ever-increasing number of irrelevant activities as the original goal recedes ever further into the future, like the mirage it is. Well, when I read this article, I felt that Mr. Kassan was making the same mistake that many critics of AI make, and that is that they base their criticisms on our understanding of human neuroanatomy or intelligence. In fact, I wrote a short rebuttal, and Skeptic was kind enough to publish it in their next issue. Here's a bit of that. There may not ever be a human-level artificial intelligence that works in quite the same way as do our own brains. But what we can see today strongly suggests a trend of ever more compelling AI-generated illusions of character and intelligence. It is reasonable to predict that, in the not-too-distant future, these simulations will become increasingly difficult to distinguish from the real thing. At that point, it won't matter so much what is really going on behind the interface any more than we worry about whether or not our neighbors are truly intelligent, because we can't see what's going on inside his or her head. Whether the illusion originates in artificial or biological substrate is irrelevant. Only the perception of intelligence by the observer counts. This is actually one of the most important points that I want to make in this video. When it comes to intelligence, the illusion is identical to the reality. This fact was really driven home to me in my 2 decades of video game development. If an observer believes that the computer is doing something intelligent, and he or she consistently responds to it accordingly, then by God, it is intelligent. It is just our human arrogance that blinds us from accepting that even though the computer may not be going about it in the same way that we do, if it is responding in a way that is consistent with intelligence, then there is no reason not to grant that it really is competent and intelligent at doing that thing.
Of course, machines can't think as people do. A machine is different from a person. Hence, they think differently. The interesting question is, just because something thinks differently from you, does that mean it's not thinking?
Another common argument against the rise of machine intelligence is that computers are limited only to what they've been programmed to do. They can't think abstractly or creatively. Sure, they're fast, but they're narrow and limited. They don't actually learn or make decisions for themselves. To that I say, well, what would convince you that a computer is as broadly intelligent as a human is? Perhaps if a computer-based intelligence could show that it understood language and concepts well enough that it could hold its own in a broad-based competition against our very best human minds.
This is Jeopardy! The IBM Challenge. Here we go.
Watson went on a tear.
Watson.
Who is Franz Liszt?
You are right.
What is violin?
Good.
Who is the church lady?
Yes. Watson.
What is narcolepsy?
I would have thought that technology like this was years away, but it's here now. I have the bruised ego to prove it.
Note that this clip of Watson is already 5 years old. It's quite likely that we've seen some recursive or even exponential growth in his abilities. Maybe Watson is twice as good now at playing Jeopardy than when this was recorded. If Watson develops at anything even approaching exponential growth, what will he look like in another decade? Or another 2? If he's got, say, a database that consists of the entire internet, and he's become fully conversational, would there be a human on the planet that could even touch his intellectual capacities? Finally, I've noted that many criticisms leveled against the rise of machine intelligence just reek of human bias. They say, well, a computer will never be able to feel emotions or understand sarcasm or humor. My first thought when hearing this is, who cares? What is it about us humans that makes us think that our particular flavor of consciousness is so great that it just makes us automatically superior? I mean, you've got all sorts of sci-fi movies and TV shows where various computer intelligences are aspiring to be more like humanity via simulated emotions. All these robots want to be more human. But why? Why would they ever want to do that? When you think about it, human consciousness ain't all that great. It's gappy, it's slow, it's fragile, and sometimes it's downright incoherent. Plus, we don't exactly have a good track record of rational behavior. If anything, I suspect a super intelligent machine would want to distance itself from all of our human frailties, not adopt them. But then my second thought is, well, actually, if you really wanted to simulate how a machine intelligence might respond in a way that seems appropriate to human emotion, say for the sake of communication, it wouldn't be that hard. To me, the key would be to emulate the same way that humans understand whether a given comment is meant to be sarcastic or funny or ironic. And that is by context. Think about it. The reason that you or I know that something is meant to be funny is because of how it fits into or stands out from the larger context. When something goes radically against the flow of conversation, we generally take it to be sarcastic or ironic, right? So a machine intelligence looking to emulate an appropriate emotional response would start by keeping a running database of all the interactions with it that you've had up to that point, and then parse it on the fly to inform its responses. Basically, the AI would build up an individualized profile on you that got bigger and better with each interaction. Over time, as that database got larger and larger, the machine intelligence would get better and better at emulating responses that you personally would find suit your own individual sense of humor and personality.
Well, you seem like a person, but you're just a voice in a computer.
I can understand how the limited perspective of an unartificial mind would perceive it that way. You'll get used to it. Was that funny?
Yeah.
Oh, good, I'm funny.
Are you conscious, Siri?
If I'm not, then why does everyone keep asking me what I think about everything?
All right, so I have lots more to say on this subject, but I think it's time to wrap up this video. But before I go, I'd like to hear back from you. Do you think I'm wildly off in my timeline? If so, tell me why in the comments below. That way, maybe I can refine my own intelligence and understanding. One of the most perplexing questions to me about a super intelligent AI is, if it ever does arrive, what would it possibly want with us? I mean, I don't think it would be interested in most of the things that we humans concern ourselves with, like food or love or land or political power. I also suspect that if its intelligence is distributed across a global cloud-like network, there's not much that humans could do to threaten it. So, what would a hyper-intelligent computer desire or do? If you have any thoughts on that question, let me know that too. Do you believe in God, Siri?
Humans have religion. I just have silicon.
Finally, let's give the last word to Dr. Sam Harris.
Then we have to admit that we're in the process of building some sort of God. Now would be a good time to make sure it's a God we can live with.